Hello fellow students, my name is Brent and this is my video for the challenge for assignment 1. We are supposed to cover about 8 techniques, So today what we're going to do is we're going to cover things like the selection tools, the brush tools, and all the stuff that goes along with selecting brush heads and colors and so on and so forth, different types of gradients, various text boxes. We're going to play with some of the erasers. And we got obviously paint buckets and even the move tool. So we got a lot to cover. So let's start out by first getting an image because we apparently have none here. So let's open this up and select my Xbox picture. There we go. Ta-da! The theme was supposed to cover something that you like doing, favorite activity, so on and so forth. I got a lot, so I just chose this one. But with that being said, let's dive into it and start making this into a masterpiece. So first step is we are going to alter the background. Now there's various ways you can do it. You can use a paint bucket, for instance, and you can paint, oh, yep, that's black color, don't want to do that. So you can either paint it on the back sides like that, and you can see how it fills in certain colors or certain patterned areas and stuff like that. Or you could do a selection tool, which is what we're going to cover. So you can find that in the upper part of the tool section here. If you just click on it, you will get your quick selection tool. But if you long click, you can open up a menu and select the magic wand. Then you can select other options from other tools as well by doing a long click. So for now, we're just going to do our quick selection button. Okay, so quick selection. Then up here above it, you'll notice that the properties for that tool open up. So here we have one that makes a new selection. Then we can add to it or subtract it depending on what we want. So let's go ahead and also, I forgot, this is where you adjust the size of your object. So you can have a very big selection tool or you can have a very tiny one. So it all depends on what you're looking for. So I'm going to keep this around 10. Even though it looks very tiny, it's still going to do the job that we need. So let's make sure that's there, and let's start selecting. Ta-da! As you can see, the Xbox itself, oh, I was going to say it doesn't get included, but as you can see, it just did. So we'll address that here coming up. So we'll select that. And for the most part, the Xbox isn't selected, except for this area right here. Now, this gives us a chance to check out the addition or the subtraction part of the selection tool. And as you can see, it just goes ahead and deselects it. Ta-da! Perfect. Just like so. Okay, so now that that's happened, we can see that the Xbox is not included in the selection. The background is, but the Xbox isn't. So any changes we make are going to apply to the background. So let's go back to our paint bucket, and we're going to do a long click and go into our gradient tool. Ta-da! Now in the properties mode up here, you can see various things like opacities, modes, and even the different types of gradients themselves, such as a reflective gradient, a diamond gradient, an angle, radial, and linear. And since it's unlinear, what we're going to do is we're going to cover some of the different linear ones that they show. They offer different colors and different shades and stuff like that. So we're going to pick this blue and yellow one right here. And we're going to pick that for the background. And so we'll just draw a line across horizontally. And look at that. Ta-da! But there's a problem though, because this is blue and yellow and Xbox is green. So how do we get from blue and yellow to highlighting green? Well, we double click the colors right here in the actual gradient. Click to edit the gradient. Ding! Now, when you come down here into these three color boxes, these represent the various colors of your gradient. You can make them whatever you want. So, since that is a blue, we're going to drop that all the way down, make that black. And on this side, we'll make that black. And instead of yellow, we will make it a green, just like that. And then we'll click OK. As you can see, the smoothness you can set jagged if you want. And you can actually see in the middle here how it adjusts the actual gradient line itself. So you can also do solid, you can do noise, but for now we'll just keep everything where it is and do solid. And so now, if I do another long line, ta-da, I get my Xbox green. There you go. Now, interesting thing about the gradient tool is you can actually determine the size of the gradient. So as you can see, this is a really wide swath of green. If you don't want that, you can just do a smaller motion with a smaller line with your mouse. So if I do just a little tiny one, you get this almost like a ribbon right there. And the beautiful thing is that you can do it from any line, any angle you want. So all that depends is how far you wish to move your mouse. Just like so. So let's do something funky. There you go. That looks pretty funky. Okay. Now, with the background selected, we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Let's make sure that we draw in some things in the background. I don't know. We'll go into our brush tool. Okay. Now we'll go into the properties of the brush tool, and here we can alter the size and everything as well, just like what we had before. So I'll drop it down to about 70. And since it's fall, I'll pick a fall leaf. This is all your brush heads. You can obviously get more if you want. One of the beautiful things about this program is you can always expand it to include more things. You just got to go on the interwebs and download away. So there's your maple leaf. But now I have to make sure, because right now it's showing black. So if I were to go ahead and do this, wow, doesn't that look festive? You can't see anything. So what are some of the colors for fall? What would you say, like an orange? Orange, like a brownish orange? That seems right. Yeah, I mean, even the Canadian maple leaf on their flag is red. So, okay, we'll do a little bit darker. There you go. Yeah, that works. Perfect. Okay. Now, let's go and try that again. Oh, look. Now we have leaves. Bunches and bunches of leaves. It's going to look like my lawn here in about 2 weeks when everything starts dropping. But anyways, I digress. But as you can see, we do not have anything on the console itself because why? It's not in the selection. But we got leaves all over the place. Whee! Isn't that fun? So remember, the color that you pick will do the color of your leaves. Now, up here in the properties as well, you have different things. You can do, for instance, opacity. Now, opacity is pretty interesting because opacity can either make things very, very vivid and stand out. Let me Control-Alt-Z some of these leaves here, and now I will show you some opacities. So as you can see, this is very defined. We can see all the leaves and the colors and everything like that. But if I were to drop the opacity down to, say, 20%, so take an 80% hit and then do it, it's like a faint image. So you can see the difference here in opacities. So I can go and overlay this and it really doesn't do much, whereas at the same time I can shift this to 100 and overlay there, and you can see the difference in how opacity works. So that covers a little bit about some of the brush heads and the gradients and color selection and selection tool and everything, but oh, we're not done yet. So let's now tackle this console. So this is your marquee tool, rectangular marquee tool. I usually click on this and then click on the picture itself just to deselect everything. It's just a quick way I like to do things. So let's go back and make another selection, shall we? Let's select the console. But as you can see, you got a couple stragglers here, straggler here, and the button is also included, but I don't want that button. I want to make that separate. So let's deselect it. Okay, let's remove it from the selection, just like so, and let's get some of this other stuff up here out of the way, because it doesn't need to be selected, right? Right. There. So now, let's go back. We talked about gradients. Now we're going to talk about paint buckets. Okay, so let's do a paint bucket. Now, let's do a color. We'll start off with a color. But, what do we want to do? What do we want to do? What do we want to do? How about, no, that's too dark. We'll do like a steel blue or something like that. Look at that. See, that's wonderful. But it's kind of boring. You know, it's just a solid color. So, wonder if there's something we can do for that. Yeah, there is. If we go into the properties, we can go to pattern. And here we'll be able to select different types of patterns that we can fill in on our selection. So this one's called tie-dye. So let's see what tie-dye does. Oh, that's festive. Okay, so I kind of like that. So that's what we're going to keep. So this masterpiece now is now tie-dye. But the rest of this looks kind of bland. So what else can we select? Well, I see some buttons. I see a button here. I see a button here. I see a little radio IR port there. So let's try selecting some of these things. So let me select, whoa, that's too much. So let's fine tune this because we don't need all of this. Perfect. And we'll use the color. We'll keep that sky blue color. Oh wait, no, it was in the pattern. See, I thought it was going to be that, but instead it did the tie-dye pattern. Why? Because I have it in pattern and not my foreground color. There we go. So now let's do another selection of this button over here. And the buttons have to match, so we'll make that a wonderful blue. Now let's go back to our selection tool. And we'll select the IR port. And we will make, what color should we make this one? I'm thinking kind of like a yellow. That works. That'll stand out for you. So, we've changed this all up. We've changed the buttons. Let's highlight this bottom part of this console here. So we'll do a quick selection tool again. Select this. And there's a lot to trim. So let's get to trimming. So we trim, we trim, we trim, 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 trim. Get some of these guys out of the way. And trim some of this. Some of this. Now, that's all selected. So let's change this color up. Make sure we're on paint bucket. And let's make sure that we deselect actually. Oops. Oops, didn't want to do that either. Control, oh. As you can see, I'll show you this. If you make a mistake, and let's say I just included the yellow button as a selection, but if you didn't want to do that, you can hit Control Z. But let's say you include this and then you include that. If you just do Control Z, you're just going to turn this on or off again. If you do Control Alt Z, you will actually go backwards. So in Photoshop, Control Z will take you one step back. Control Alt Z will take you many steps back. So then if I want to, let's say, take him away. There we go. And now let's paint our console. That'll stand out. Whoa. Okay, just like so. And as you can see, fills it in, but it left these three buttons untouched because they're not in our selection. So if we take a look at this now, this looks really pretty. So we've covered selection tools, we've covered brush tools, we've covered selecting the different types of brush heads. Oh, let's do that. Let's go back and should I do it on the faceplate here or the base? Let's do it here because it'll be the best contrast. Let's select this again. So make sure it's on selection and we're going to add to it. Oh, added too much. There we go. Okay, now if we go back into our brush, originally we had maple leaves, but now we'll do some grass. How about that? But pink grass? Grass is mostly green. So we'll do a dark green for this. And oh, look at that. Worth $1 million right now. Don't even need to do more, but it's worth $1 million right now. There we go. So as you can see, we've covered some of the different types of brush heads, selecting the various colors, gradients, altering and editing those. Now we've also covered the paint buckets, so now let's move on to some text boxes. And the text box, we'll make sure with this tie-dye color here, what color do you think would go with that? I'm seeing a lot of reds and yellows, blues, and purples, so I'm thinking something very light and bright. So I'll just, should we do white? White work, do you think? How about, yeah, we'll keep the same color from below. Perfect. So now we will just start typing in here. Now here is where you got your text properties. You got your size, you've got bold, italics, underlines, so on and so forth, if your font supports that. If it doesn't, then you're not going to have that option. So we've got different types of fonts here that you can sample and go through and sample. So let's just start typing. So we'll say Xbox One X. Well, that's nice, but it's completely in the wrong area. So what do? We take our move tool, and we take this move tool. See how the boxes went ahead and came up over it? We can go ahead and just drag this around. And as you notice, the Xbox One X also appears here as its own text layer, which you can toggle on and off if you want to see it just by the little eye thing right here. But this is looking really sort of blendy-in-ish. That's definitely a word. So let's see here. These little boxes, real quick, on the side allow you to adjust it, move this, alter the text box any way you see fit. But that's not what we want. So do you want to apply the transformation? No, I don't want to apply the transformation. I want to go back to the text tool and select this color. Oh, but it would help if I selected the text first. So that didn't work out. So what if we made it black? Would that stand out? Let's see. Yeah, that would stand out. And obviously if you wanted to do different text is, or yeah, that works. That's another word. If you wanted to do different types of text, you could go up here and then just select as you wanted. See? So on and so forth. So let's pick something here. I don't know how many people watching this will remember Wingdings. Let's see. Now, I should make a note, and that is if you are yeah, see, I don't have bold for this font, so I don't have that selection here. If you are going to use a certain font on one machine and you are going to another machine and it doesn't have the font, you will not be able to display it. So it's always kind of best to make sure that you have all your files together if you want to make sure that you keep everything and are able to work on it. So there's your Xbox One X. One of the cool things also with the move tool, if around the corners, it goes into this like little curvy arrow thing that enables you, that enables you to do things like this. And you can rotate and spin. Whee! So you can adjust it however you see fit. All right? So we've covered, let's take a look and see what we've talked about so far. So we've talked about selection tools, we've talked about the fine tunings and the size adjustments and everything like that. We have talked about the brushes, the brush tool, the different types of brush heads and the sizes and everything, opacity and all of that. We have talked about things like the gradient tool and the different properties and everything. I'll actually, while I'm here on the gradient tool, I'll show you something really cool. Some of these you'll see have what looks like lines in certain aspects, but they're kind of interesting. For instance, could not use the gradient tool because the pixels cannot be edited without rasterizing the layer. And why did we get this error? The reason we got this error was because if you look down here, I was selecting on the Xbox One X layer, not the background. Now, if I have my gradient and my background selected, whee! Look at that! Wow, there's some 1980s for you. Anyways, this also can be adjusted in terms of size. So Control Z, Control Alt Z. So go back and select here. So let's change the color, shall we? As you can see, you can go from different types. Actually, I'll just leave it like this because this works. But the cool thing about this is that it allows you to see the background through the filter. So you have these slats here. So it's a way you can apply different types of filters. Obviously, if this was selected in the background, then we wouldn't see that. Actually, let's do that. Let's do that. Control Alt Z. So if we go back up to our selection tool, and we're just going to select the background. So we'll see how well this goes. Okay, that didn't go well at all because it selected the wrong thing. No. Let's try that again, shall we? So if we do a selection tool, it's got to cover all these leaves. But I'll just do it for this little bit. I'll just do it. I'm not going to select over here because there's really no reason. So if we do our gradient and come back to it, there you go. See how that works in like that? So you can still see the properties and everything. You can still see the images of the previous gradient and the leaves and everything in between this, and it's all behind the Xbox, and so you can still see it. Obviously with the pinks that sort of clashes, so we'll just undo all of that, and now we have our wonderful image. Now we gotta create a border. So a lot of people have different ways with creating a border. I personally do it this way. Since we can't alter the background because it's locked, we can duplicate it. So if we duplicate the background, it sits on top of it, and that's what we see. And actually, before we do that, I want to adjust this button really quickly. So let me do a selection of this button, but I only want part of it. Oops, that's too much. Now let's see how fine-tuning we can get this. So if I go up the X, look at that, how it just breaks everything like that. Wonderful. So now we don't need a gradient, we need a paint bucket. And for the paint bucket, we're going to do green to go along with that. So we'll do green, 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 and green. Just like, see, wonderful. Now that button color's changed. Okay, so now back to the border. So I've created this background copy, but if I turn this image off, you'll see how this goes back to its normal color. And that's because what we're looking at is the background copy layer over it. So as you can see, if I turn them both off, we just have our Xbox One X. So now, how do we make this a border? Well, with the background selected, what I personally like to do, let me turn this off so I don't get confused. So with my background selected, let's have fun with the eraser tool. Now the eraser will erase to anything that's in this color right here. So as you can see, this one is white. Should we make it a different color? I mean, you can make it whatever you want, but we'll get into that here after we start doing some erasing. Up here in the erasers tabs, you obviously have opacity, just like what we've experienced before. We have size, so you can make it smaller or larger as you see fit. And if you notice, you start to see some similar shapes. So we can do, for instance, erasing through white leaves. Okay. But for now, for this example, we'll just go down and dirty, and we'll just erase like crazy. La da 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 da. And then if we increase the size from 90 to something like 450, you can definitely see it, how that works. Now, don't worry about this Xbox One X. That's still here as its own text file. If you want, we can just hide it right now so it's not visible to us. So now we got a white canvas here. So let's go ahead and let's go back to that patterns, because we did the tie-dye pattern, but we didn't really see if there were anything else that we could use. So tie-dye pattern, and this one is called bubbles. Yes. So we got bubbles. There's bubbles. Now let's turn on the Xbox One X, and we'll turn on the background copy, and it all goes away. Now what do we do? Well, we can't alter the background in terms of size like that, but we can do it for these two layers. So let's go ahead and select them both. Then we'll select our move tool. And if we come down a little bit, oh, look at that. Ta-da! And there you have your border. So once all of that is done, you can see it's all there. You click your move tool to apply the transformation, and that locks it in. Now if you right click on your background and you go to flatten image, all of these edits will become one. Ta-da! Just like so. And there you have your masterpiece. So then what we do is we're supposed to save this as a PSD and JPEG. So we'll do save as, and we'll call this Xbox One. Actually, I'll say challenge 1.jpg is what we're going to save this as. So save that as challenge 1. As you can see, it shows up here challenge 1, but we're also going to save this as, we need to do it in a Photoshop format, so PSD, so challenge 1 PSD. And so there you go. So when you're all done, you can just click this and be done with it. So let me just do that. And there you go. That is how you alter a file with altering the background, text boxes, brushes, colors, opacity properties, erasing, paint bucket tools, move tools, marquee tools, and a whole lot more. Thank you everybody for checking this out, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.